First, you may notice that I'm in a new location and I sound a bit different. This is because sometimes I'm going to be taking care of an elderly family member, so my background will sometimes look like this. And the mic quality may be a bit worse just because I don't have the same processing I can get on my laptop that I can on my big desktop machine. So bear with me, I'll figure out what I can do about audio quality and lighting setups and other things later, but this is a measure that I'm not sure how long I'm going to need to use it, but hey, I'll be occasionally going back to the old setup as well, and I'm going to try and do most of my recording over there. But anyway, for this video, what I want to do is I want to follow up on my points from the previous one, where I talked about archetypes being overpowered in free archetype. And there were many comments on that video that disagreed with me, and I can't go to each one of them individually and write out a reply, so consider this to be a reply to all couple hundred comments that I received on that video. Because yes, I did get a couple hundred comments. And I just want to start off by saying thanks for all the attention. And most people, I think, got the point of that video. The video had a 95% like to dislike ratio, which honestly was more than I was expecting. So with that, I want to go into my first point, which is the but new players argument. And the argument basically said that newer players will not make the super hyper min-max decision, so free archetype will not be a balance issue for new players. And, well, there is some truth to that. A new player without any guidance will usually not gravitate to these super powerful options. But there are a bunch of other issues with that. First, what if a new player does gravitate towards one of those really, really ridiculous powerful options, but the rest of the group simply doesn't? And then you have one character who has a power budget that is far exceeding the rest of the party. Some groups may not like that very much, and that's an issue. Other groups and other players may have the issue of, well, as a new player to Pathfinder, do you know how many archetypes there are and how much stuff there is to just read on Archives and Nethys? If you implement free archetype into a game, you're making it so that every single one of your players needs to take an archetype. And that means all of them will need to read so many things to just build a character. So it increases the barrier to entry of the game. And if somebody really does want to take an archetype because it fits their character, they can just spend class feats on it like the game was designed to do. So I don't like the but new players argument for that kind of reason. And I know somebody in comments is going to say, what if the new player looks up a guide for what archetypes are good? And well, now you have a new player who is just taking the min-max things, and this entire point is invalid. It then becomes the power level issue again. But now you're having a new player manage far more abilities than they would have had to otherwise. So I think free archetype isn't actually that good for new players. It might be good for a specific kind of new player who's really, really excited by the character building. But in my experience teaching new players the game, that is not a universal truth. And I want to then follow this up by saying there are downsides even to just giving archetypes that are more versatility, like Dandy. This is something the comments didn't really understand by me pointing at feats like Party Crasher as very strong. And the reasoning behind me valuing things like Party Crasher that highly is that they're passives. They just come up when you need it to. And yeah, it won't break the campaign, but if you multiply that by the amount of characters you have in the party and the amount of different situations they can just handle because they have free archetype, they become significantly more powerful at dealing with those skill-based challenges, which thus makes it a balance concern once again. And also, if all the characters are super versatile, everybody can just attempt everything and each individual character is less special, less unique. And I think that building unique characters should be a major draw of this system. I don't like the way free archetype kind of funnels people into the good archetypes and can somewhat turn the game into good stuff piles, in the same way commander decks have kind of become good stuff piles in recent years. And that's a Magic the Gathering thing for those of you that don't know. But the idea is that if all of the characters are now trained in most of the skills of the game, suddenly being the character to try and diplomacy your way out of stuff becomes less unique. And that may be a bad thing for specific playgroups. And you may say, hey, I like all my characters being a bit more versatile and being able to cover more roles, to which, absolutely go for it. I'm not saying this rule should never be used, I'm saying it has drawbacks, and it should not be assumed as an always on by default. And then I can go into, but the issue is just individual archetypes are OP, and those are overpowered even without the variant rules, so why have it? And to that I say, what? Like, there are high power level archetypes that I think are equivalent to or slightly above the power of normal class feats. And if you're doubling the amount of a resource of any character in this game, it is going to be powerful for them. If you had the option of playing a fighter and taking twice as many feats, that is clearly stronger. And if you can translate those archetype feats into raw power with those dedications that I showed in the previous video, plus Beastmaster, because I simply forgot to mention it, you will have more powerful characters. And it won't be more powerful in the sense of the numbers are bigger, because the math is very well contained. They'll be more powerful from the fact that they just have more abilities, more ways to deal with every given scenario. A well-built free archetype character is like half a level stronger than a normal character. And then people would say, but Player Core 2 is going to come out and fix the champion archetype, which I highly doubt. I super hard doubt that. And the reason I doubt that is because I saw what they did to Cleric. Now, Cleric used to rely on Charisma in the pre-remaster days, but they wanted to get rid of its Charisma reliance going into the remaster to make it more new player friendly, which I think is a very good design goal, and they didn't want to break backwards compatibility. Note that. So they gave all clerics what a charisma-based cleric would have in terms of their healing. So their idea is to simply buff everything up to the point of the new baseline. And thus, I don't think that champion archetype, which is very heavily built around for a lot of characters, including ones in Pathfinder Society, is going to get that major of an adjustment. I highly doubt it. Because, like, in order to make it balanced, they'd need to move the feat that gives champion reaction down to like a 10th level archetype feat. And that would break so many characters that I highly doubt they'd do something like that. They're more likely to buff champion so it is better at using its reactions above what the multi-class archetype would let you do. That is the approach they are more likely to take. And that's a pretty consistent theme with Paizo. Unless something is very egregiously over the line, it's not getting errata nerfed. And if they were going to nerf champion archetype, it would have happened by now, because that archetype has been in the game basically unchanged since the first printing of the core rulebook. The champion archetype is here to stay. A lot of those powerful archetypes are here to stay because they do not want to break backward compatibility. Because they will not break people's characters lightly. They're more likely to errata nerf a piece of equipment because, well, just swap it out. You don't ruin your entire character from it. But to directly change an archetype that is that core and that central to so many people's characters, that is such a big ask, that's probably never going to happen. And let's say they did. Okay, there's still Psychic, there's still Medic, there's still Wrestler, there's still so many things that are super powerful still, and another one will get printed next year. Because that's just how these things go. Archetypes get printed at a much higher frequency than classes do. So some archetype is going to be very powerful, and free archetype will let you get that as extra benefit. Because I think the best archetypes are only slightly more powerful than native class feats. But getting twice as many class feats is going to be a big power level bump that many tables will not be ready for. And again, that is if your players are looking to maximize it, but I think that new players will maximize it because they will look up guides. And now I'm going to acknowledge the final argument. but I just want to play my high power, wackier game. And that is perfectly fine. And free archetype can help you do that. However, I don't think it's the best thing at doing that. Because dual class exists, ancestral paragon exists, there are other variant rules that are cool, that can make exciting characters. Because one of my big issues with free archetype in the previous video was it takes away decision making. Well, with dual class, you still have things that are competing for every slot, because you can choose to, if you are a fighter champion, you're still choosing, am I giving up a fighter feat or a champion feat to actually pick up the wrestler dedication? What am I giving up in order to gain my archetype to better build this character? And you are then combining classes together so you can have a more interesting class fantasy. Because like the idea of a thaumaturge rogue that is doing the sneak attack and all of their recall knowledge stuff along with the masterminds stuff is a cool character. And things like that are very doable in dual class and could be very unique. And I just don't think free archetype should be the default way people play higher power games. Because I think there are other ways to do that that lead to more interesting builds, more interesting gameplay. And I admit that free archetype is still really good for a lot of tables. It's a popular variant rule for a reason. Because I see a lot of sentiment online that if you're not playing free archetype, you're not playing real Pathfinder, and I think that's honestly kinda nonsense. Any amount of Pathfinder 2 with or without variant rules is still this game. And this game is great. And I think that you shouldn't get lost in, I love my one variant rule and this is my one way to play it. I think you should look outside that box and look at the other styles of play, at least so you can look at them and analyze them and think, huh, that is interesting. I don't really want to do it. And that's really my goal with this video, is to have you look at it from a different angle. And if you don't change your mind, that's fine. I'm not here to tell you what you should do with your table. I'm just saying that I think that you should think if you really want free archetype. And with that, I think I'm just going to sign off. So I'll catch you on the next video when I'm probably going to be talking about Player Core 2, because at time of recording, I should be getting that about tomorrow, and I'll be on the content grind for that one. I'll see y'all next time.